your boss, okay? Give the questions.
Starting from now. The recording has started now. I think that's me. Am I showing up on that?
Yeah.
Right.
That's good.
Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and get the mic up and actually start talking and putting presentation stuff together in a way that makes reasonable sense to all those interested parties. Hi. My name is Antoine Wright, and this year I've been given the absolute pleasure to come to Australia for a couple weeks through really kind folks at GRN. I am here to talk with you about mobile and stuff, and mobile and stuff, and mobile and stuff. Play. All right, here. Okay, it's warming up. Cool. Keep warming up. So I'm going to here to talk about mobile and stuff and mobile and stuff. And I forgot all about the whole idea of a lamp needing to warm up. It's warming up, and as it warms up, that's not mine, but source. What we're doing. There you go. Future memory. Perfect. I want to start with a poem. Makes good sense, right? I mean, we're going to talk about the future of everything, but I really want to start with a poem because the poem kind of takes us down the road to where I want to go. And poetry's better, of the other things besides this fly that I'm figuring out as I'm here in Australia, that there's a rhythm to life that is kind of missing in other places. I kind of got a glimpse of it as I walked through Sydney and noticed the way the people were moving around and the people flows. I got a little bit more of a glimpse of it as we were in Corona and paying attention to things, and folks pay attention to dreams. And there's a whole channel dedicated to psychics. And it's like, okay, this is kind of interesting. Folks are on a whole different plane. Then again, I am in the Southern Hemisphere, so I should probably understand that. But it provoked a little bit of a poem in me. And so, you guys mind if I share the poem? Because the poem really is going to be what I'm talking about. So, it's like a poem and an outline all at the same time. A watch and a tablet. Now, we do know the rise of mobile. A child and her uncle. We know this overpopulation and underutilization. A step back into the future. But what steps won't we take? A printer and a printer. The definition of everything changes. How great and how small. We all know our parts in his story. Again, I start with a poem because, well, frankly speaking, it's me. I've been doing poetry since I was 9 years old. I'm now in my mid-30s. That is a long time to be writing poetry. But poetry tells about the story of my life. There's a lot of things that happen through poetry. I talk about the relationships that I had. I talk about the people that I want to be around and be with. I talked about the death of my father. I use poetry as kind of a thread for a whole lot of things because poetry just makes sense. Good sense. And part of my life, is really, compromised in, some of the things that matter to me. So one of my best pieces of poetry is a relationship that I'm in right now. She would totally get mad at me as soon as she sees this. It's one of the better pictures. This is one of the shareable pictures. You ladies know what I mean, right? The ones you're allowed to share. This is allowed to share this one. But that's actually a picture of my lady and I. We've been together almost 4 years now. And both of us wearing my favorite NFL football team colors and shirts, Philadelphia Eagles, because I'm a Philadelphia native, even though I live now in Charlotte, North Carolina. But the Eagles are who I cheer for. And last night, if you heard a really loud groan, and it didn't sound like a bear or a bird, it was me. Very mad that the Eagles lost to the city that I live in now, Charlotte, North Carolina. All right. The other one on top there is a picture of some of the stuff that I am most interested in. I am interested in mobile devices, mobile technology. So to all of you that were looking like he's wearing 2 watches, he is wearing 2 watches. To those of you wondering, what is Antoine going to talk about this time because he's the mobile guy? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about watches and phones that are watches and earpieces and headsets and all that really cool fun stuff. But that's part of what, interests me. And then obviously, because I'm one of the thinner guys in the room, food interests me. Specifically food that I cook. So that's a dish that I made not too far recently. That was a steak fillet that was broiled with a little green onion, green pepper, red pepper, white onion, a little Parmesan cheese, and olive oil. That's what I like to do. I like to cook. So I like to create things that allow me to enjoy life, and I like for my technology to get out of the way when that happens. Obviously, that's not always the case. I have to go to work, and this is the kind of work that I do. I work for people, and I help them manage, well, everything that you're looking at here. So the big graph is the hype cycle. That's, all of the technologies that we tend to deal with. Well, I help organizations and teams better understand how that manages the work. Oh, that's okay. That's just fine. That's going to be the best part of the video, actually. But I help them understand where technology fits, specifically for their teams or in particular parts of their workflow, aka I'm extremely strategic and also training oriented all at the same time. Also on the training side, I deal with Microsoft Office stuff. Products is really a well way to say it, but I say I deal with their stuff. So I do everything from helping organizations understand for their specific teams how to use Microsoft SharePoint, collaborative content management beast, all the way to helping them understand how to do fun things in Excel such as VLOOKUPs and pivot tables and pivot charts. To all the data analysts go, he knows my craft. And I go, yes, I cry with you. And then on the top there, you see the other piece that I do. There's actually two meanings in that one as well. I help organizations better understand how things fit because I can draw. And so I use my talents in drawing to be able to build wireframes, scoping diagrams, process diagrams, or frankly get things out of my head that might help an organization better understand what it is that they're trying to build. This is, pretty much what I do professionally. And that's part of the picture of who I am, and so I know some of us have had a number of conversations, and I've been withholding stuff because I was going to talk about it, and I wasn't sure whether, I was going to hurt or help. So now you know. I got a bit of a full picture. This is the other side. This is why I'm here. Mobile Ministry Magazine. And specifically, this is a drawing that I did in 2011. What is mobile ministry? So it's a very big image, about 1,500 pixels by 1,500 pixels. I drew it on an iPad 1 with my fingers, trying to explain what this thing is, because by that point, I had been at Mobile Ministry Magazine for a little more than 7 years, and I had to figure an easy way to explain to people what it is that I do, or at least how does my mind work as it relates to how does technology and mobile work together in this ministry space, because just telling people God uses technology for His glory does not really work when you're saying, hey, I need you to hire me as a contractor. But this picture works really, really well. Worked very well, in fact. And so because of endeavors such as inside of Mobile Ministry Magazine and this picture and other pieces that I've created, I've been able to kind of carve out a niche for myself and for a lot of you who are in organizations who are trying to figure out where mobile is and what mobile looks like. In a very real sense, this is me. But that's just all. I don't do any more bio. There's no more bio after this. All the fun stories come in all the other talks. So let's talk about what matters today, a watch and a tablet. Why a watch and a tablet? That doesn't make absolutely any sense, right? But all of us have noticed the rise of mobile, and we all seen, stuff like this happening. When I walked through Sydney, I really did. I lost count of all the people wearing Fitbits. I thought it was cool because, one of the things I do in America, one of the things I do this. Okay, it's OCD-ish, but I do this. If you do it, thank you for being a friend. One of the things that I do is I count how many people are wearing Apple Watches everywhere I go. And so I tried to do that here, but that didn't work so well. Everybody was wearing this one. Everybody had the gear. So I was like, gear, Fitbit, gear. That was pretty cool. I was like, well, how about that? I thought I was like ahead, leading edge, and just to find out that I'm just a day ahead. But this is kind of, what life is beginning to look like for a lot of us. There's this mobile phone that may or may not be a wearable, and then there is a wearable. A lot of us are paying attention to our health. And then we have a big screen device. And in my case, I have an iPad, and then I have a tablet by a company named Jolla that are my computers. There is no other laptop, unless you count a Chromebook as a laptop. But there is no other computer. And that's a computing paradigm. That's, for all intent and purposes, normal. We know the rise of mobile. We know why that's the case. I mean, if you look at the graphs are cool. I like numbers, I like statistics, mind you. But look at the graph. No mobile, no mobile, no mobile, no mobile, no mobile, mobile. It was kind of neat. We all of a sudden, around the same time that there was this thing called a web browser that was developed, people started getting mobile phones in their pocket. And then all of a sudden it was like they didn't just get mobile phones in their pocket, they got mobile internet in their pocket along with the phones. Some of us had a Palm Pilot, the i705. Wanted that thing so badly. Because that got me the internet anywhere I went to, and for a really expensively cheap, $30 a month, I can get headers of my email delivered to me whenever I wanted to. Not the whole email. Would not send you the whole email. You had to pay for the $50 plan for that. And I wasn't that guy. But we see this curve where mobile just kind of is on this whole different. It's different. There's nothing like it. There are very few technologies in the world that have acted like mobile. I mean, as a matter of fact, a gentleman, ethnographer, anthropologist, who studies technology and tools, he says the mobile phone is the only thing that has infiltrated our pockets in the last 3,000 years. Think about it. What do you leave your house with? Keys, wallet. That's kind of been the memo, right? Keys, wallet, ladies' keys, purse. But keys, wallet, phone. I mean, the rise of mobile is such that we don't even leave home without this little appendage. Distractionary piece of device. Mobile is cool. It's neat. And, of course, obviously, when we do leave home with it, we're now expecting it to do a little bit more than just to keep us in contact with persons. Our mobile is our wallet. I like that idea of my mobile phone being my wallet. I actually don't like carrying my wallet. But there is enough identifiable information in my mobile phone, where I go, who I talk to, my fingerprint, etc., that I probably don't really need an ID card anymore. And, the only reason why I really need to carry a credit debit card with me is because I can't do contactless payments over $100. But every once in a while, for example, after this trip, when I want to do big payments, I got to use a card instead of my phone. And I want to use my phone and not my card. That's because that's where mobile is. And then we have, the other side of things. I mentioned Jolla earlier. I like Jolla because Jolla says there's a world beyond iPhone and Android. There's a world beyond what Apple says computing looks like and what Google says computing looks like. And we want to give you the power to figure out how it looks. And so, inside of this rise of mobile, the other thing that we're seeing are these niche, these platform operating systems that aren't exactly consumer friendly, but they're not exactly enterprise ready either. And they're allowing us to explore what computing looks like, maybe not according to the definition of somebody out of Palo Alto, California. Which is kind of neat. The Finnish interpretation of computing has a lot to do with sharing, collaboration, and equal ownership. Who knows? That could actually work. And then the other side, obviously, is the watch. Because mobile devices are great and everything, but how many of you have purchased new mobile in the last few years where you realize you can't get your small mobile anymore? That iPhone 4 was a really good size, right? The 4S was a little bit bigger than I really wanted to handle. And that 5 is just a long phallus that I don't really want to deal with. Intentional word. I don't want to deal with these big phablet-sized devices just to hold it up to my ear and say, hello, I don't want to talk to you. But that's exactly where mobiles are going. And so, there's this other thing that's happening where people are tracking their health. They're tracking the notifications that are coming to them. They're actually playing the role of Dick Tracy and going, hey, how you doing? Really nice to talk to you. I've been doing it in my car lately. It's the coolest thing in the world. Every cartoon has come to life. But in some respect or some effort, that really sideways that way? It really is. All right. Mobile does turn into something else. I mean, it's not just the fact that this rise of mobile is going to become anything that we're really happy of or really endearing to. It does kind of turn into something fabulous, something fun, something worthwhile. Cybernetics, anyone? Oh, okay, wait a minute. Because cybernetics is a term that scares folks. But how many of you have a Bluetooth headset? You're cybernetic. How many of you have a pair of glasses? You're cybernetic. How many of us have orthopedics in our shoes or a special insole? There's cybernetics there. There's this use of making a tool that augments our natural person so that we can do something that we didn't do before in a very real sense. We put on a superpower. And this gentleman here, he talked about designing for this world without screens. And obviously I don't want to do this whole presentation and not point to him. Well, probably I should. But this gentleman, he did a TEDx Sydney. He talked about what does computing look like when we stop thinking about the screen. And that's kind of a hard proposition for us because everything about computing has been about the screen. The happiness, the joy of the iPhone revolution was pinch and zoom. That's all it was. It was pinch and zoom. It had nothing to do with anything else. Autocorrect was an accidental accident. If you ever went to autocorrectfails.com or any of those beautiful autocorrect sites, you'll see that's all happy accident. But the not happy accident was that I could take a picture and I could actually do the God thing and go, pinch, oh, I'm like further, I'm farther, I'm closer, I'm further. That interaction is a purely screen-based interaction. And how do we know? Because all of our kids would do that when they're in the cars, when they're traveling with us and like, Mommy, look, I got the melon in between my fingers. I used to do that. Or I used to take my Hot Wheels and drive on the side of my road with my dad and ask why my dad couldn't go faster so the Hot Wheels couldn't pass the other car. There's this thing that we have that we sense that computing can, should, will, kind of should be a little bit more than what we're thinking about. And, well, I like that idea. I like the idea of getting gestures and touch within my computing environment. I like that my activity tracker knows the difference between me standing, sitting, and laying down. And then tells me, you didn't sleep well. I think computing has a way to go, and it should kind of point to a world where it's a little bit more than just us being entertained. At least that's my opinion. And I think it's the opinion of a lot of the folks that we deal with. Now, my favorite little person in the world is my niece. This is the ICCM moment where I show my family photo kind of thing. This is my munchkin. This is my little niece. This is, as you can tell by the way her foot is postured, she has personality. Okay, and she is definitely used to the photo, the picture. But I want to point out something in this picture. She and I are about to take a trip. She knows usually when Uncle comes to visit that she's going on a car ride somewhere. We're going at least an hour out of the way. She and Uncle go and we have our fun. I have, the requisite uncle bag, her book bag, packed with everything that Mom said that she needs, aka don't buy anything for her. All right. She's got her glasses on that I bought for her because my niece is a fashionista in the making. She loves her fashion. You can tell by the flower hat and all, and the sandals that had to match the flower and the hat. But then notice what's in my hand. That's not my tablet. That's her tablet. My niece is on her second iPad. She's got a good uncle. Or I'm definitely uncle. But she's on her second iPad. And one of the things that's very clear to me when it comes to her is that even though she understands the world without computers, her world is very much about this whole sensory explosion. This whole computers aren't just a thing that I do. It's just integral. She'll never know a world without internet. She'll never know a world without mobiles. As a matter of fact, because of her uncle, she thinks of phones as FaceTime. She doesn't think of phones as like pick up the phone, hello. It took up 3 phone calls for her to get it that Uncle's face doesn't move on every phone call. But that's her world, and that's a good world to have. Unfortunately, with her world, she's also going to have to deal with these other issues. Overpopulation. That's something that kind of hits all of us, whether you're in the remotest parts of the earth or in the most urban areas. There's just too many freaking people in the world. We're going to have 11 billion people in the world by the turn of the next century easily, unless, something major happens. Many of our mega cities are going to be bigger than bigger than bigger than bigger. And the really cool part is that we're going to all be living longer on a world that's not really getting bigger by itself. So there are going to be some people that are going to feel like that they can't do what they're designed to do. There are going to be some folks that are going to be pushed out of their jobs. Or worse, there's going to be no such thing as retirement. In the United States, anybody that's my age, mid-30s and younger, literally has no retirement. We don't think of retirement in the same way that our parents did. We can't. There's no, you've worked all of these years and the government saved this money on the side for you and you'll be able to cash that in later. It's not going to happen. The money's not going to be there. The actual idea of you having your sunset years and a beautiful sunny place in Florida where there's only other people that drive 12 miles an hour on a golf cart in the middle of the day, that's really not going to exist. And so we're going to have to figure out something differently. For that little munchkin of mine, she's going to have a whole different work experience than me because her work experience is not going to be built on, I do this to retire. It's not my idea either. I don't do this to retire. But because of that, we've got some things to deal with. I shared one of these graphs earlier, but then there's more here. But this here is a list published in June of megacities. Cities in metropolitan regions that have currently more than 10 million persons. So a big city is considered 1 million, a megacity is considered 10 million. All right. At the top of that list, the number one on that list has like 37 million folks around. 37 million. There are just about 37 million people in the state of California, which is bigger than all but like 20 countries by itself. But a city with 37 million people, that's a whole lot of people. Are all those people going to be working? According to the numbers, nope. Actually, according to the numbers, about a third of those people are unable to work completely. They're either seniors and already jobbed out, or they're kids. Okay? And then of the 2/3 of the folks that are left, half of those people are working in jobs that don't even pay them living wage. So you got 1/3 of the people that are taking care of everybody else that may or may not be doing so intentionally, and most of which aren't going to be able to retire. They're not going to be able to move to some sort of sunsetting of their life. And that's kind of bleak. I mean, for all the stuff that this technology brings to us, but it's also brought that. And that could be kind of, scary. So I ask myself, when I see my Munchkin, that's her nickname, sorry. When I see my little lady, my niece, and I see her on her tablet, I actually have two worlds looking at me at the same time. The first world says that this is the way that she will interact with everything in and around her. And this is kind of cool. She's got this borderline screen-based, gesture-based, it's pretty much always video, still pictures kind of don't exist unless she's in a coloring book, kind of mode. And then at the same time, she can be dead to this. My niece defaults to when she eats, she has to have the iPad there. It's her TV while she eats. Mid-70s when we all got TV dinners, early 80s. And we was like, it's not really dinner unless there's a TV also going on in the room with us or the other room. That's kind of what she goes through. My niece is like sitting in the strata of these two extreme ends of what the next thing will look like. And it's cool and it's scary because her uncle is a techie. And her uncle wants to see what's going to happen. And her uncle, hopefully, giving her a good example, maybe not by giving her a second iPad in 3 years, but hopefully she becomes something a little bit more than just another person just traveling this world, just thinking about nothing. I consider, for her sake, everything that I do, from the coffee that I drink and where it's sourced from, to how many miles that I put in my car, to how do I interact with you all. The pictures that I've taken that I've been here, this goes into her almanac. These pictures, these are my pictures, but they go into her almanac so that she can see what the rest of the world looks like. Because her world's going to be a lot different than mine. Her world's going to have 1 or 2 chemical companies, not 20. Her world's going to have only a few banks that actually bank, Visa and somebody else. You know, everything else is going to be person-to-person interactions. Her world may have Christianity as the number 2 religion, not as the number 1. And I have to prepare her for whatever world that she's going to come into. I consider what her world's going to change into. And that's what I build now. 10 years ago, I had no clue. I was building a world for me, trying to figure out how to eke out a living. But now I realize there's something a little bit bigger at stake. That's the dynamite. Bigger at stake. But obviously, you know, you can't really talk about the future unless you step back into the past. And thankfully, this talk comes at like the best time ever. Sure, you guys have seen this. Okay. 1983, 85, August 17th-ish, 1985. There was this movie called Back to the Future. And then there was a part 2 after that. But in the part 1, Marty McFly, the main character, got a pair of Nikes from the year 2015. October 21st, 2015, to be honest with you, that laced himself up. And his clothes automatically dried too, which was, like, honestly speaking, way better, you know, than the self-lacing Nikes. And there were flying cars, and the Cubs had won the World Series, and all that other good fun stuff. But he got a pair of Nikes. And what was really interesting, you know, when that date in Back to the Future got here, all the people that started reflecting, all over social media and in mainstream news, you saw all these folks going, it's been 30 years since that movie already? Where have we gotten? What have we done? You know, the only thing that everybody can actually point at that really changed a whole lot? Mobile. It was imagination back then, but now it's the real thing. And, well, you know, the shoes are actually real. So if you go to this link on Facebook, you'll see Michael J. Fox actually putting on the first pair of these self-lacing Nikes. You know, Nike gave it to him, and they made sure to put the video right on that date. But then I thought it was really cool that they had Michael J. Fox doing it, because Mr. Fox also suffers from Parkinson's. Parkinson's is incredibly debilitating, because it's a disease that makes you remember the past because you can't do as great a job holding on to your present. Your present is literally, the neurons are literally having trouble holding on to the right now. And that it exerts itself either in the way that your muscles act, or your heart acts, or how you remember how to even get up or get down the street. This gentleman who's battling with his present is also demonstrating to us what we used to dream in the past. It's kind of neat, kind of cool, really humbling. But uncomfortable. As you probably have imagined already, I talk to organizations about change. I help them better understand the implications of crap or good that's happening. Sometimes that crap is really cool crap. You know, it's like, you know, minutia of, you know, we've gone from really big radios that sit in the corner of a room that need an extra power generator, and we have to build a whole economic system around it in order for us to just go ahead and power the one radio, to really small mobile phones that still need power, but now we can give people bicycles to power the mobile phone and enable more than just the one person in the corner with how to power their community. I deal with disruptive change. And I like change. I can't speak for a lot of people. Change is fun to me. Change is good to me. Change has been fruitful. But change is uncomfortable. Change makes us reconsider whether or not God's called us to this thing. Change makes us reconsider whether or not the world is going in the right place. You have a whole continent trying to figure out if they can exist longer because the religious tenor is changing from one group to the other. A whole continent's trying to figure out this and trying to figure out what this looks like. So, you know, there are some people that will sit down and go, future, change, living the same. And then there are other people that are like, change! That's change. And then there are a few of us that look backwards to look forwards. That's kind of nice. And you kind of have to sometimes. You kind of have to see what did you used to dream that the future would be like, and see if you actually follow through on your own promises to get there. Like going back in that time capsule and saying, I wanted to be an astronaut. And then realizing the only space that you fly in is a minivan. But you're still hitting the stars. Yeah. Now, check out change. I give you 3 examples, just 3. Three really easy examples of change. Okay? Now, go ahead, take in the pictures. Think about it for a second. Alright. Change. Change number 1. Jesus film. Most of us are familiar with that project. Names. You know how hard it was for that organization to get to this app? You know the kind of change organizationally they had to go through? And here, I'll tell you one of the simplest pieces of change that the Jesus Film Project had to deal with. They had to understand that people did not necessarily want to watch or listen to an hour-long video. No, the gospel takes an hour. No, the gospel takes about 5 to 10 minutes. No, it takes an hour. No, it takes 5 to 10 minutes. And it has to be well produced. There cannot be any graininess in the recording. Change. Everything changed when they decided, seriously, go mobile. And then the really cool part happened right after they went mobile. All the pastors that they had went to before said, do you have pastor training resources? Oh boy. Watch the other change that had happened with that organization. They ended up building a specialized version of their app that just had pastor resources. Change. What did that change with the organization when now we're thinking about how we train up the people that train up the people to be disciples? Versus how do we just get them to say, I acknowledge Christ? Difference. Significant difference. Point to the other 2 images here because they go together actually. All right. The first one is a graph. MOOC is the acronym. It stands for Massive Open Online Course. Okay. So most of us are familiar with going online to maybe take a class or 2. But here's the cool piece or the not so cool piece depending on where you stand. Most of our universities are moving to that as a framework for how you do school. That attendance in the classroom is optional. Attendance in the classroom is only necessary for the most basic of classes or for those persons that cannot afford a computer and a broadband enough internet connection in order to get the content. Sounds like a flip, right? We used to tell people go online for the course, because we said the interpersonal, going to the classroom was the college experience. But now what's happening is that for many colleges, 25% of their revenue and 25 to 40% of their students are taking online courses. Even those students who are enrolled on campus, they're taking online courses. And then, you drop that down a step to those kids that are in high school, junior high school, that age range from 6, 7 years old all the way up to 17 years old. You have this rise of homeschools that's happening in the Southeast United States, which is really neat. And most of them are using these massive online courses and or YouTube in order to facilitate teaching lessons. And what does that do when now the schoolyard is now the backyard of my home? And what does it mean when the classroom, our kids that are sitting upstairs right now, that are currently taking classes, half of which are handwriting and the other half they are truly doing online. How does that change things? In Europe, it's scaring the bejesus out of folks because a lot of funding is pushed to schools in order to keep education going, but now you're pushing funds to a place where education isn't happening because people are doing it in their own schools or their own made-up schools. What happens to those people? What happens to that funding? And then to those that are in the classroom, they get the other image here. Microsoft had this cool concept image. I like concept videos. They're really good. They make you dream. They make you ooh and ah, and they make you want to go buy something that doesn't exist. Microsoft had this idea of a connected classroom, and they did a whole video about it. And the first part of that connected classroom has actually come to pass. But that's a good screenshot of, what I think a cool connected classroom would look like. For Get the blackboard. We all got a big smart board LCD screen, right? And the kids all have a tablet-like kiosk either on their desk or it is their desk. And now they're interacting with content. And the cool part of the video, Microsoft is showing handwriting along the way, because a lot of folks say, why are you going digital? You're getting rid of the handwriting. But they didn't get rid of the handwriting. They actually showed an interaction between one kid and a Telugu Urdu context and another child from the West Coast. And the kid wrote in English on one side of the wall, and on the other side of the wall it showed up as Urdu. It was kind of neat. I wanted that classroom. But that's the reality, because Skype now does translation on the fly. It's not exactly great. But that future is here of learning, talking, interacting with one another. Because the fact of the matter is, that's what we used to dream. And for the things that we used to dream, some semblance of that we have to get to eventually. If we believe that they're going to be flying cars, then we probably should do a really good job of making sure that the air is clean, so that they have something to fly through. If we believe that kids should travel the world and interact with other kids around them, then maybe we should do a better job with the laws about visibility and parental guidance, as well as the same laws that we deal with about punishment and justice. I mean, that's my simple thought. But you can't leave a tech conference and not talk about drones, right? I didn't do the Amazon one because that would have been the appropriate one, but I was trying to figure out what the route would look like here if we could get an Amazon drone, because I did see something on Amazon I wanted to order, and it would have been nice if it got here. But a drone would have been really cool, right? But here's the thing, the drones aren't a consumer level item. It's actually a logistical item. Drones actually ask two questions. What if people don't need to be in most dangerous situations in order to make stuff move? Whether that's picking something up or surveillance. And surveillance can go any number of ways, from an entertainment standpoint to a military standpoint. What if you don't have to put somebody in the way of danger in order to get a good view as to what's going on? What if in the wildfires in California we could use drone-enabled helicopters in order to dump the water instead of putting firemen in the way? What does that change? Shouldn't that change? It's a dream. It's kind of sort of coming to pass. Kind of sort of. Then we have my other friend. I'm a bicyclist. I didn't put that picture in. I thought the one of me and my girl was a smarter thing to do. But I like to get on my bicycle. I have a road bike, and I have what's called a hybrid bike. And I'm itching very badly every time I see a cyclist out here that I should probably be on a bike with them. No offense to ICCM, but I like biking a lot. One of the things I noticed about biking is that I am getting older, my knees are getting creakier, and at some point I'm going to need some assistance on how to pedal. And I don't necessarily want a really heavy bike. After experiencing the bike you can pick up with your pinky, you don't want a heavy bike anymore. And I asked, what's going to happen in that space? Well, this company invented what's called the Copenhagen wheel. A wheel that enables people who are in cultures where you can walk and cycle reasonably safe to be able to bike without breaking a heavy sweat, because it offers a little bit of electric assistance to them. A little bit, not a lot. It's not a moped, but it's pretty close. What does that change? It means that the people that were unable to bike in my culture to get from one end under the strip to the next end, they can go ahead and continue to cycle. Really excellent video just published yesterday, aka it did not make it into my deck, was of a gentleman and his wife. They've been married 50 years. She's suffering from Alzheimer's, and his love is to take care of his wife. But he does so, but they move to an area where they can both bike. And he built a bike for her. The bike has basically got a wheelchair on the front, and he bikes in the rear, but it's got a little bit of an electric boost to it, so it doesn't hurt him so much when he's pedaling with his wife. And on all of the video, the whole video was just about him taking care of this woman, but the most impressive thing was how she smiled when she got on the bike. I'm talking about glow, big smile, because there's something about that freedom of movement. What if stuff like the Copenhagen wheel can enable some of our aging populations to keep being active? And then lastly, what if we just stop driving? Okay. I don't really plan to stop driving. I will be one of those Luddites who will drive until there's no such thing as a Porsche 911 to be driven, because that's what you drive. It's a drive. But, there is a convincing case, logistics side, when you're dealing with construction and shipping for automated vehicles. For most of the developed countries, much of the traffic, on the road traffic, is actually shipping traffic, getting goods from one end to the other. It's not people going to work, it's actually getting goods from one end to the other. And they all take the same route. They all don't make the same left turns, or they all don't make the same right turns. Okay? I mean, it's literally all programmed. Well, what if it was all done automatic? What does that change? Who loses a job? Who gains a job? Is it smart enough to recognize, the Google one isn't, mind you, is it smart enough to recognize when a cyclist is walking beside it, is riding beside it? There's another video, also yesterday. Tesla, you may have heard about has an electric car. Tesla's released a number of updates, autopilot. It's kind of neat. Actually, the car kind of stays in its own lane, it does where you want it to go. And there were a few folks that were going the dangerous route. They were making autopilot truly work like a hands-free driving, against the rules, and they put the videos up on YouTube because that's what all silly people do these days. But one of the things that you can question their ethics in doing so, but what you can't question is that at some point there's some level of driving we won't do anymore. It'll truly be like Knight Rider, where we'll say, "Kid, take us home," and then the steering wheel will shrink and shrivel away, and we'll just kick back and catch a nap. We just finished going to a nice buffet, and there is no more room for the steering wheel. So we need that to happen. I'll ask you this, and I ask me this. As an industry, there are some steps, that have to happen in order for us to get to our futures that we dream about. But what steps will or won't you take? Tesla doesn't ask, honestly. They just don't ask, what does it mean for you not to drive? Okay? That's not a question that they care to ask. That's an age of knowledge question. That's an industrial age question. You know what they ask? They ask, how much time do you really want to have back in your life? And what takes away time from that? Thinking about power, thinking about your utilities being clean, thinking about driving, not necessarily where you have to go, but why does it take you so long to get there? They start thinking about these really big, wide, weird-seeming questions. It's not too different, than the questions I have about me and my niece. The life that I live, I want to make sure I prepare for my niece, but they just do it on this really grand scale. And the grand scale is all great and good because they're a cool industry, and they can release batteries that are completely solar-powered and will enable a whole lot of people to do some really cool things as soon as we figure out how to make a clean battery. A different question. But it is a question worth answering. What chances won't I take? And how far back in the past will the lessons do I need to look to figure out where it is that I need to go? Perhaps there's an answer. Because there's an answer, right? There's always an answer. There's always an answer. And Star Wars is cool. Star Wars is great. However, Yoda, or yogurt if you were a Spaceballs fan, but I was. There's this question and answer that's happening around our culture these days. The definition of things are changing. There are printers and then there are printers. It used to mean one thing, to be a computer, and now it's wholly something different, and that definition is about to change yet again. Did you know men could not be called computers at the turn of the 20th century? It was not allowed. Only people that can be computers were women. Yes, men were called analysts. Totally different thing. They were supposed to support the woman who was actually doing the job of calculating. Neat stuff. Which is why Mr. Babbage and his friends decided to make a machine. Though a machine could be smarter than a woman. Of which every married man in this room says, bad challenge, bad challenge. But over time, we do recognize that the definition of things do change. And sometimes when those definitions change, it becomes a little bit hard for us to kind of figure out where we stand. In the United States, every state in the United States has a marriage equality issue going on. I think it's a money issue personally, but that's politics for another day. But the definition of marriage is like the hot button topic. What is marriage? What does marriage mean? And we have this big, beautiful cultural discussion. We have another discussion going on at the same time. It's called Black Lives Matter. Where the question is, does race matter? And if race does matter, who do we include and exclude out of this conversation? There's another conversation called Lean Back, where ladies are having this conversation and we guys are sitting here going like, are we supposed to talk? Are we not supposed to talk? Because there are ladies that say, well, you're supposed to lean into being a working woman and a mother and other ladies that say, no, I either want to just stay at home and do my job here, or I want to be a career woman and do my job here. That I shouldn't have to lean into all of these things in order to meet somebody else's definition. It's a really neat suite of discussions. But in this, where I find that there was a statement, I wish I could have found the quote. I was looking for the quote, I could only paraphrase it. But the gentleman basically said, anything that was invented when you were a kid is magical. Anything that was invented when you were a tween, you're probably still using to this day. Anything that was invented after you were a teenager is mostly strange to you. And anything that was invented after you're 35 is just flat out weird. It's uncommon, it's abruly, it's abnormal, aka you're a Luddite, because you're not going to catch up with it. But that's really, where it is, because the definition of things do change over time. And it's okay. You know how many people over 35 are scared of this is my phone? I didn't know. I thought everybody would be excited to see Dick Tracy finally come to life. It was a cartoon, right? We all got excited when we watched him go, hey, Sideshow Bob, go this way. I thought everybody was excited like I was. Dick Tracy, The Jetsons, Kim Possible, and Minority Report. All right, so pick a generation. I think I just covered everybody. But we all had the same thing. We saw the communicator on the wrist. I thought that was so cool. I had no clue until a woman literally said, that's a phone on your wrist. And she backed up. She was afraid. I said, but ma'am, you got a phone in your pocket. She says, I know, but that's just too much. I was like, huh? And then it hit me. Anything that's invented after you're a teenager scares the bejesus out of you. It challenges what you think is normal. And it's okay to challenge what you think is normal. It's actually psychological. It's supposed to challenge what you think is normal. But what we're supposed to do, we're supposed to define the opportunities that are encased in that. We're not supposed to say, a mobile phone was made after, I don't want to deal with a mobile phone. You figure out how and what way can that mobile phone be used to a best advantage. This is a picture of my wallet. You guys are, Antoine, that's not a wallet, that's a screen on your phone. It's my wallet. Because everything that matters to those retailers that offer me something of value can and does show up in a digital space. Why shouldn't it? Why should I be like my father and carry the big lump in the back pocket? I still don't know how he sat down straight all these years. I don't know. He had the cash and everything else, and every card known to man. The wallet was this thick. I don't know how he sat straight. Nah, I just do the phone, thank you. Some of us are challenged with the idea that we're no longer the central repository where people come and get our stuff. This idea of the App Store. I don't want to be in an App Store. I don't control the App Store. What do you mean you're getting 30% of everything I make? 30? I'm negotiating something else because I'm from the Commons where we negotiate these things. No. Apple makes an App Store. You abide by Apple's rules. Google makes an App Store. You abide by Google's rules. Whoa! We can either go with it or be challenged by it to create new avenues. Or the last one here, I had to cut the lady's face because she probably doesn't know I have a screenshot of it, but her resume on LinkedIn was plenty impressive. Well, sorry, that's kind of weird to say your resume on LinkedIn. LinkedIn doesn't really show your resume. LinkedIn shows how you're connected and how you network with other folks. It's not a resume anymore. Your resume doesn't matter. Your past things don't matter. It's how you connect to the things that matter. It's a resume. It's a vitae. It is your vitae. It's your CV. That's still it. But a vitae is a snapshot, a moment in time. LinkedIn is dynamic. It changes along with you. As a matter of fact, it changes so much with you that you get all these pestering posts. Did you know that this person worked here for 5 years? Congratulate them. What happens when the definition of measuring our work even changes? Because it's not just life as usual. Give you an example of some things that are coming our way. Things that are the definition of these things that are going to change quickly. The first one here is a trash can. Say, Antoine, come on, you're crazy. Trash can? You mean the definition of a trash can is going to change? There's actually a really cool thing that's happening in this concept called smart cities. They're building trash cans that automatically separate the trash for you. Because nobody separates their recyclables from the regular trash, from the refuge, and then the glass and the plastic and the not so plastic. Nobody does that. So if somebody actually built a sensor inside of a trash can that'll actually separate the garbage for you. But all you have to do is just put it in there. And then when one of those refuge areas gets full, it sends a signal over an encrypted network to the city government that that trash can is full, and that's when the trash is picked up. Not every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. So now those trucks aren't on the road all day. They're only on the road when they need to be, which cuts down on pollution, noise, and air pollution. The other one that you have there at the top is a pending piece of research that is under testing right now, FDA, from Google, and their super secret spy group, Google X. I don't say spy group, it's probably a bad way to say it, but they do all the really fun projects. They're actually working on a tattoo that's your password. Because how many of us hate logging in our password everywhere? And how many of, well, if you've got an Apple device or you're getting the new Google device, how much you're going to appreciate the way your fingerprint just works to log you into items or to validate purchases. But what if it's not even that complicated? What if it's just literally speaking my biorhythms, the structure of my DNA plus the pulse of my heart rate and the time of day and the way that I'm waving my arm, hallelujah, is automatically how I give my offering. I know, right? That'd be kind of cool / scary. Some of us are in churches where they tell us to raise our hands all the time. Okay? And then lastly, you got augmentation of the best kind. I know a lot of us don't think about it. We think of glasses as just something else. But these are crutches. Glasses are an accidental handicap. Okay? They only became fashionable in the late 20s. And that was partially recession driven. But glasses are basically a crutch for your eyes. They help you see things, quote unquote, clearer. I use quote unquote because who tells you that you really can't see clear except for yourself? That's an ethical thing. But what other things that are happening is that people are starting to see this idea of glasses or fashionable technology, and they're making body parts. They're augmenting themselves. They're making exoskeletons. In Japan right now, there's an exoskeleton that's being tested by the Japanese government that will be used in construction areas so that a person, a man, little guy, me, 70 some odd kilos, okay, can go ahead and pick up something that's 3 times his weight multiple times a day and never suffer any muscle damage. They're building an exoskeleton for that. That's in my cartoons. Like every Gundam cartoon ever. Yeah. There's Mr. Pistorius, South African, who was indicted for murder, but who was also an Olympian. The prosthetic legs that he had were experimental. He had prosthetic legs that didn't just allow him to walk, but allowed him to run at world record speeds. He was using materials that hadn't been used before, that are basically replacing bone and tendon. We're making metals that are as strong as what God built in order to help people who don't have that ability do things that they hadn't before. They actually had to make a new law in the Special Olympics to allow those kind of prosthetics because kids wanted them. Which is kind of neat. Now what happens when that goes further? When we go past the Botox and the plastic surgery and people start saying, I want to cut off my arm and I want to get the digital version. How do we respond? Shouldn't we respond? Could we respond? Yoda has an answer. And it's not the Force. Everything's going to change. Everything can change. But we do have a bit of a guiding post, a goal post, if you will. So every time I get to this, I knew this was going to happen. Every time I get to this screen, how great is our God pops up. It is totally not the direction for the talk. It hasn't been. But every time I get to this on my rehearsal, I was getting to, how great is our God. Because I was thinking like, man, it's really cool. All this really cool stuff is happening, and the definition of everything is changing, but there's this really cool, consistent, common thing that keeps happening that God just keeps saying, yo, look at me. I'm cool too. I do some amazing things. And he does. That was on the way here to campus, on the plane. The 5-minute sunset, as I tweeted. And everybody and their mama breaking their necks to look at this sunset, because of all the things that do change in this world, there is this unchanging God that's like, guess what? All of this cool stuff is going to be great. And there's a future of everything, some of which you dreamed about and some of which you can and can't imagine. And frankly speaking, we're going to make some mistakes. But man, he's cool. And it took me a hot minute every time I rehearsed this to get past this. I'm really not lying. I really rewrote this several times. Partially for this reason. How great is our God? God, focus me. Get me back on track. Help me. There we go. That's what I needed. It's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle twice than for some of us to put down a mobile phone. This thing is addictive. And it's not just the tool that's addictive. It's not just the feeling of it. I mean, the really cool part is that a lot of us don't realize we put cases on our mobile phones because they make it feel better. Feel. It's literally our sense of touch. The design of a lot of these mobiles, the rounded back, the beveled edges at the top, or if you got the new Galaxy Edge that has the screens, that curves a little bit on the top, and we end up rubbing our thumb across there. It's designed to provoke our senses. We don't really want to put this down. Okay? We think we want to, there's a thing that's a construct that says, put it down! You're talking to somebody! Stop looking down at your phone! You're on dinner with your husband or your wife! Stop looking at Facebook! But we can't. It's hard. It's difficult. But the cool thing about difficult is that God's not that opposed to that difficulty. And I found that since doing Mobile Ministry Magazine, that God uses the technology of this age to show me some stuff that, frankly speaking, points me back to Him fairly quickly.